Hello, everybody, and welcome to WOD on a Saturday right here. Whether you tune in the morning, the afternoon, or the late night hour, we want to thank you for being with me on the Boom Broadcasting to get your weekend started off on the correct way. But before we could even jump into WOD, we want to thank everybody for tuning to all the great content this week on the Boom Broadcasting. Of course, without you guys, there would not be a Boom Broadcasting and none of these shows without you guys tuning in and watching what we're dropping right here on the Boom Broadcasting. Jam-packed show today. I can't wait. We got a heel, ladies and gentlemen, and there's nothing more that I love than a good heel helping a babyface get to the next plateau of the next level as they keep climbing. So much to unpack. We got inductees in the Hall of Fame. WrestleMania's right around the corner. So, of course, the WWE Hall of Fame is coming up. We got a great show right here for you. Stay tuned. You're watching WOD right here on the Boom Broadcasting. Welcome back to WOD right here on the Boom Broadcasting. As we stated, heel turns, Hall of Fame, NXT Brooklyn's coming up on Tuesday night, a jam-packed Monday Night Raw, a hot Friday Night SmackDown. TNA is blowing up. AEW, they're doing their thing over there. We just had an interview with Thomas Tony. But let's look into the main two focal points that I want to talk about this week. Hall of Fame and the heel turn. We're going to be looking at some other heel turns right here on WOD. But first, the Hall of Fame. So every year leading up to WrestleMania, week by week, WWE announces a Hall of Fame inductee. We, as fans of professional wrestling, sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it, we thought that the first one they would announce would be no other than Psycho Sid, Sid Justice, Sid Vicious, whatever you remember him as. I remember as all three. Sid Justice when he first broke into WWF back then. Then he became Sid Vicious when he jumped over to WCW, ECW. Then he jumped back to WWF and became Psycho Sid. So I remember all three phases of Sid. But Sid Eddie is a wrestler that was deceased. He did pass. And everybody knew he was going to be the first name inducted because Sid's somebody who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He does not get a lot of credit. But you got to remember, he put a lot of guys over. Help a lot of guys get to that next level. Remember, before Goldberg got to that next level, who did he have to beat on that undefeated streak to win the United States title? Psycho Sid. Well, back then, Sid Vicious in WCW. That's who he had to beat. Sid has not been announced yet, but I'm willing to bet the farm and the ranch with the car and the horse that Sid will be the last person they announce for this year's 2025 Hall of Fame. But WWE has announced three people, and we're going to look at these three people. The first one they announced was Triple H. First round ballot Hall of Famer. He is the game. Cerebral assassin. He's everything we have said. He is a guy that came to WWF as Hunter Hearst Helmsley, a blue-collar chipper from British Connecticut who did things the proper way and evolved from somebody who was doing a courtesy bow at the beginning with some real classical music to what we see today, the game. Triple H has done it all in WWE. He's the head of creative right now. We feel like his WWE is being what fans have been wanting. Is it sometimes right now with him as the head of creative that we get a little bit upset? Yes. But we can arguably all agree that he finds a way to keep us bonded by doing those wild things that we saw on Raw. Io Sky beating Rhea Ripley. That's Triple H all the way. That's got his signature on it. Hall of Famer. Should have been in. I think he wanted to wait till he was officially done. Still think if he would not have had the little scare with the heart thing, heart problem, heart attack, then he would kind of still be competing on and off whenever they need him. But with that, he's officially retired, and this is the guy that deserves to be in the WWE Hall of Fame, hands down. Some people get in because of who they know, who they are. He gets in because he's put in the work. Now, the next one right here gets a little discombobulated. Because yes, she deserves to be in, but she should go in as a tag team and not as a single. That's Michelle McCool. It should be Cool, Lala and Michelle. Without Cool, without Lala, there is no Cool. There is no Michelle, no Lala. To me, they were arguably the best tag team duo in that Divas division during that era. Now, can Michelle put in work? Yes, she can put in the work, truly. But I really thought if you were going to give her the flowers and give her the Hall of Fame, it doesn't hurt to be married to The Undertaker. We saw that for some rank last week, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And we'll also say that it stinks, but it doesn't hurt to be married to Undertaker. But she's going in. Really think she should have went in as Coon. Think it would have been better, but I feel like they want her to go in individually, then induct her with Coon, with Lala, with Coon, and then about another year or two. But we did see The Undertaker pull rank. This broke news, and this is something more you would hear on It Stink. But we're going to break it right here. Then we probably will segue on It Stinks within the next week or two. The new show on A&E, LGC, I believe, where they got guys trying to break into the business. You got Bubba Ray, Booker T, all the Undertaker, all these people here, Shawn Michaels, kind of scouting, giving them pointers. Mickie James was supposed to be the female of that show. Undertaker pulled rank and said, I want Michelle, my wife, Michelle McCool, to be the person. Now, he's already saying now that I didn't want Mickie James to get fired. I wanted both of them up there. But if you know me and I know the Taker, and we all know the Taker, he pulled rank and Mickie James got the boot and Michelle McCool got that slot on that show. Hey, no disrespect. If you got pulled like that, Taker, hey, use your pull to make sure you get 2 incomes coming off that show. But we saw that Undertaker, he said it. It's still his yard when it comes to WWE. Now, the breaking news of this week is the third person inducted to the Hall of Fame. And Cody Rhodes went to personally go see this person to let them know they're being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Do you feel like it was a little bit staged when I watched it? Yes, you had to kind of let them know what was going on. But a part of me felt like it wasn't staged. A part of me felt like he did not know that he was going to be inducted. And that's no other than Lex Luger. Now, we saw all versions of Lex Luger. We first saw him as the narcissist, posing in the mirror with people, with women holding mirrors around him. Then we seen him disappear, went over to WCW, had a good run as Lex Luger, brought back to WWF in a few years after that, the All-American Lex Luger. Really thought that was going to get over, but Vince just could not push it the way he wanted to push it. To me, back in 93, watching Lex Luger as the All-American, when he slammed Yokozuna and got on the Lex Express, as a kid, I was driving to Raleigh every weekend. No, I wasn't driving. Let me take that back. I was begging my parents to drive me to Raleigh, Greenville, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Durham, Burlington, Charlotte, anywhere, because I just felt like if I could be at the right place at the right time, that Lex Express will roll right by me, and I can say, I saw the Lex Express. Well, I'm here to tell you, we rode all of it. I begged my parents every Saturday to take me somewhere different, to keep me on the highway, and I never saw the Lex Express. So I'm starting to think the Lex Express only ran on Mondays when he had to come to Raw, because it was a borrowed Trailway bus that they had put a name on their Lex Express. But to digress on that, Luger had a great run in WCW. His run in WWF was not good. The narcissist, he just didn't get over. Was a good heel, but Luger was not meant to be a heel. Came back as the All-American Lex Luger, had a great run, but then you had a guy named Bret the Hitman Hart, who we'll be talking about a little later on the show, that was on the brink of breaking out. And I just felt like with Lex, when you brought him back at that time, and you had a guy like Bret Hart that was just in that Intercontinental mid-card division that was tearing the house down with matches with Mr. Perfect and all of them, it just kind of pushed Bret to another plateau where Lex kind of started dropping down. And Vince had spent high money and getting this All-American Lex Luger to be the face of WWF at that time in 96, because you had a lot going on. You had Desert Storm, Desert Shield, all that stuff going on. You had the Foreign Fanatics versus the All-Americans. Remember that? The Steiner Brothers, The Undertaker, Lex Luger, supposed to be in Tatanka in that spot. Tatanka got hurt. versus Louis the Bogan, Yokozuna, the Mounties, Crush, all of that. You had all of that going into that 96 Survivor Series, but Luger just didn't feel like he was getting over with the fans, because even when he won the match via countout, after him and Bret both got eliminated at the same time, and that's when I knew then that Vince was pulling the plug on Luger, because you do a double elimination to Royal Rumble, both of their feet hit at the same time. To this day, I still don't know how both of them pulled it off. Hats off to Bret the Hitman Hart and Lex Luger for being able to do that. In the age we are now, where we can do slow motion, all this editing with our phones and stuff, did one of their foots probably hit first? Yes. But back in 93, 96, hey, we couldn't find it. I knew then Lex was giving up. Vince was giving up. When Yokozuna got counted out and the confetti fell and Luger won the match via count out and they celebrated, then to come back later on that night for Bret Hart to beat Yokozuna and become the new WWF champion, you knew then that Luger's run was over. But Lex was able to leave WWF. He left quietly. A lot of people didn't know he had left. He left quietly. And this is why he's in the Hall of Fame. And I know he's had a lot of controversy and stuff with him and Miss Elizabeth at the end before Miss Elizabeth died, all that stuff. We know that. We know Lex is sick right now. We knew Lex had to pawn one of his roles because he had got a little hard up on money, which we understand. Things like that happen. These guys don't have a pension. They don't have a retirement. They break their body. They give their soul to the fans every day. And there's nothing for them at the end of the day if they don't save properly. And you got to remember, back in the 90s, what guys' contracts now are, they won't make it in the 90s. But Lex was able to go to WCW. And this is why Lex is going into the Hall of Fame. Because he became the total package in WCW. He was a heavyweight champ, a U.S. champ, a tag champ, one of the founding members of the NWO Wolfpack. He was the guy that got Sting to join the Wolfpack. A lot of people thought it was Kevin Nash and Conan and them. It was Luger. When Luger joined the Wolfpack, he kept saying Sting would do it. Remember, him and Sting was tagging. Luger was in and Sting still was out. He was able to pull Sting into the Wolfpack, and I felt like that was one of the shining moments of his career. Winning the title, beating Hollywood to win the title for the heavyweight title, put him in the torture rack on WCW Monday Night Nitro. Luger had a great ending run in WCW. WWF just did not know how to push Luger to his strengths. Was Luger the better wrestler? No. That's why Bret Hart inched above him, because Bret Hart was putting on 9 out of 10 matches. Luger was doing like 7 out of 10 star matches back then. It was Luger, body slam, big elbow, 1, 2, 3. Where Bret was going technical wrestling, mat wrestling, little aerial attacks, all that stuff. So why Bret was his execution back then. But Luger, not somebody like a Triple H, a first round Hall of Fame ballot. More of a third, fourth round Hall of Fame ballot. The WCW career saved him. Being in the NWO really re-sparked him in WCW. Good matches in WCW. A good tag title run with Sting in WCW. And a good heavyweight title run. So Luger's going in. I'm not upset. I felt like right now is the right time to put Luger in. Luger's up in age. Luger's been sick. If you really want to put him in and have him, give him his flowers while he's alive, this is the perfect time. Like I said, not a first-round ballot like a Triple H, but damn good ballot. You know, we got what we expect out of Luger, who was not a true professional wrestler. You got good title runs and good memories with Lex Luger. So congratulations to Triple H, Michelle McCool, and the All-American, the Narcissist, and the Total Package, and one of the founding members of NWO, Red and Black, the Wolfpack, Lex Luger. We're going to hop into a commercial break, and we'll be right back to talk about some of the biggest heel turns in the industry of professional wrestling. And if you didn't get a chance to check out my man Podcast Smitty's top 5 heel turns, make sure you jump in and watch that today. You watch a Boom Broadcaster. It stinks. No, not it stinks. WOD. Hey, we're live. Let's go.
I think it's been the best decision because I gained a son that can't nobody touch. And he's the best son ever. When I say that, I mean that.
Learn about adopting a teen at adoptuskids.org.
Welcome back to It Stinks. We hope you enjoyed my breakdown. Did I say It Stinks again? WOD, man, I gotta do another exchange. That's twice. We are live today. So hey, when it's live, anything goes right on the Boom Broadcasting. Welcome back to WOD, the only show that's certified masterpiece approved by my good friend, the Masterpiece Chris Masters. So I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of the 3 Hall of Famers that have been named: Triple H, Michelle McCool, and the All-American, the Narcissist, or the Total Package, Lex Luger. But there's been a lot of discussion. Heel. The biggest heel turn some people have seen was last Saturday night with John Cena. But before we can get started, there's a question that's brewing on people's mind. And I had to go get my trusty friend, the Dictionary of Webster, to give us that answer. So what is that question?
So, Professor Shawn, what is a heel?
A heel is a person you hate. He's somebody that's a villain. He cheats to win. He holds the tights. He uses foreign objects. He takes any measure he can. He pushes the referee, whatever he has to do to win a match. That's a heel, according to Webster's Dictionary. And we've seen great heel turns in the course of my life. I told you I have lived through a lot of eras: the golden era, the attitude era, the ruthless aggression era, the new era, which I call it, don't even have a name. I call it the new era. I lived through a lot of it. So I lived through that 80s, 90s, telling my age, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s era. I've been through a lot of eras of wrestling. Now, as I always say, I took some breaks. But even when I took some breaks for a couple of years off, I kind of stayed in the loop because it would be one person that always brought me back. So I want to go back to 1987. Like I said, we're not ranking on my man Podcast Smitty did an outstanding job on his show Quick Hits, ranking the 5 greatest heel turns. We're just going to talk about some great heel turns I saw in my lifespan watching this thing we call professional wrestling. Back in 1987, there was a guy that was over, but he had somebody that was just a little bit more popular than him. And when you think about the 87 year, the 88 and 89, the rock and wrestling thing was rolling. It was rolling. WrestleMania was going on. They started this rock and wrestling thing back in 85, 86 with the first show of WrestleMania. They were doing stuff on MTV. It was big. It was very big. But even with the Iron Sheik, Sheiky, being the transitional champ, because Vinnie Mac knew that my show is on national TV. I got mega stars. I'm bringing in mega stars. I can't keep going with this format I've been doing for the past 5-10 years. And that was All-American, Bob Backlund. He was the champ. Everybody loved the All-American Bob Backlund. How could you not love him? Fan favorite. Kissed the babies, shook hands, took pictures, talked to the president, stood up to the bad guys. He was what everybody dreamed of. He was the All-American boy, Bob Backlund. Vince knew that moving on to a national TV network, this wouldn't fly. People would not tune in to see this clean-cut good guy who does it by the book every week. He knew it. So what did he have happen? He had the biggest loss on the All-American, who was undefeated. He was a 3-year heavyweight champ, undefeated, lose against the Iron Sheik. And then the Sheik was a transitional champ to usher in the new era of Hulkamania with Hulk Hogan. Hogan beats the Sheik. As Hogan ushers in this rock and wrestling era, things are big. Hogan is big. Hogan's over more than life. He's just as big as Ric Flair was back there in the NWA at this time. But there was still one person that was a little bit higher than Hogan on the scale who fans come to see. That was the 8th wonder of the world, Andre the Giant. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, in 1987, we had arguably the biggest heel turn ever when Andre the Giant, a fan favorite who had always came to the Hulkster's side, when the Hulkster beat the Iron Sheik and brought the title back to America. That's how they dubbed it. The title had left America. The Sheik had the title. He brought it back to America. Andre the Giant was the first person out to celebrate. He was pouring champagne on the Hulkster in the backstage interview with Mean Gene Okerlund. And then in 87, Andre turns on Hogan and sides with the most villainous manager you could pick, Bobby the Brain Heenan. In the Piper's Pit, Bobby the Brain had got in Andre's head and said, Andre, you are bigger than Hulk, but this guy never gives you a title shot. He's given everybody one except you because he know you can beat him. Big heel turn because Andre had been a fan favorite all his life, all over the world, everywhere he traveled. People loved Andre the Giant. I remember hearing dear old Granny talk about Andre the Giant, how he was the biggest attraction in the 70s, 80s when it came to wrestling. Even in the 60s, he was the biggest attraction. Mainstream TV is what they wanted. Andre was not a guy you could put on mainstream TV. Yes, he was doing movies, The Princess Bride. He just wasn't as big as the Hulkster did. So he turns on the Hulkster at WrestleMania 3 to have a classic match. And one of the last things that Bobby the Brain Heenan said that was this low point of the heel turn, because everything went perfect. Andre pretty much had talked. Hogan didn't know if he was going to win. Hogan knew the script for the match. He wanted to write the script out, but Andre wouldn't cooperate with him. And Andre was doing what Andre do. He was the boss, playing mind games with Hogan. Finally, you know the story. Slam, leg drop, 1, 2, 3, match over. But Bobby the Brain Heenan said one thing before he got sick, before his death, and he couldn't talk no more. Bobby Brain said the saddest night of his life was coming back from the ring, knowing that was probably Andre's last match that he probably would ever do, due to, bad back, everything going on with health-wise, that the fans threw trash at him as he walked out of the arena back to the back. Bobby the Brain said that was always the lowest point of that heel turn. Everything was perfect leading up to it. Yes, it pushed Hulk Hogan up to a next level. Andre did what he supposed to do as the going out biggest star to pass the torch. Yes, this is a time-honored tradition, as Vince McMahon always said. Andre did the tradition and passed the torch, but the Brain still said, remember them just throwing garbage at Andre after what he had given to the business. It just tore him up on the inside. And the Brain said after that match, he went in the back and he needed some time to himself. And it was because the match was so good that we knew that the WWF had finally passed the torch to Hulkster, but the Brain was just distraught and tore up of how the fans treated Andre that night. And I went back and watched that match all the time. And you can see Andre riding on that little motorized cart, heading to the back, and people just throwing trash, throwing drinks on him. And, back then, that's when if you was a heel, that's the treatment you got. To see Andre go like that, Andre did get another Raha moment when they brought him back. He was able to get in the ring, get that proper send-off he deserved. But in 1987, one of the biggest heel turns was Andre the Giant turning on the Hulkster and going to the dark side. As my good friend Coach Sam at the West Charlotte High School always say, there's nothing wrong with going to the dark side. Now, let's go to 1992. And this is one that I remember watching on a Saturday morning at my dear old granny's house, sitting on the floor with that floor mount TV, my eyes glued into the TV. She's sitting in the couch, her eyes glued into the TV, because in 92, this heel turn started something that every wrestling fan till this day still say and makes this statement. Even at work, I make this statement, and a lot of people that watch wrestling at work know what I'm talking about. Now, people who don't watch wrestling, it goes over their head till we explain to them what this statement means. Nobody wants to be the Marty Jannetty of a team. That's where that statement came from right here. Nobody wants to be the Marty Jannetty. 1992, The Barbershop. Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty. The Rockers, a big, big part of my childhood, one of my favorite tag teams. They started in AWA. They were dubbed as the Midnight Rockers. And I tell everybody, watch them when they was in AWA. We had tapes of them. The Rockers were a combination of the Rock and Roll Express, and the Midnight Express combined together, and you had the Rockers. They cut the team. They started in WWF. They got fired due to the lifestyle they lived. They just couldn't get along with talent. Vince brought them back. But back then, the AWA, it was falling apart. Vince had stolen all the talent. And here these two guys come from the AWA. They put them together. They were best friends, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, and they formed a perfect tag team. But the Rockers had a great breakup, and they had some things that led to this breakup. The first one was the match when Marty Jannetty got distracted against the natural disasters, Typhoon Earthquake. Hey, her Typhoon Earthquake may be going in the Hall of Fame this year. Well deserved for the natural disaster, especially John Tinsley. Very good guy. Very good guy. They had a match where Marty Jannetty ran out and followed Jimmy Hart. Then they had a match at Survivor Series where Michaels got rolled up pinned by Brian Knobs of the Nasty Boys to get eliminated, and that started. And then Michaels started getting on a different page. Marty Jannetty kept trying to want to keep the team going. Michaels wanted to go solo, and they had the great barbershop interview where Brutus asked the question, are the Rockers back together? And Shawn Michaels said, we are back together. The Rockers are back stronger than ever. We are back. The fans going crazy. They play the music. Da-na-na-na-na. They play all of that. Everybody's going crazy. Brutus is going crazy. Everybody's celebrating. The Rockers are back. And then the infamous thing happens. The super kick heard around the world where the statement began, nobody wants to be the Marty Jannetty of the team. And shout out to Marty Jannetty. That's my guy. I like Marty. Marty's a good guy. But Shawn knew. Vince knew it was Shawn's time. Shawn knew it was his time. Marty knew it was his time. And Shawn kicked, the super kick heard around the world and threw Marty through the barbershop window, took the magazine with him and the Rockers on the picture of the WWF magazine, tore it apart. And the rest is history. Shawn went on to become Mr. WrestleMania, HBK, arguably one of the 5 greatest of all time wrestlers in WWE and maybe in the world. He's on that Mount Rushmore. A lot of people forget to get that name, Mr. WrestleMania. It's because you're putting in work at WrestleMania on the showcase of the Immortals. Marty Jannetty falls to the wayside, has some good runs, comes back and forth, bounces around some indies, bounces around some other places, and just never got to the plateau where Shawn Michaels got. Lena's always saying, nobody wants to be the Marty Jannetty of the team. Now, our next heel turn that you should remember, and we're going to go forward, because sometimes you don't have to do like Andre and Shawn. Turn on your tag partner, turn on your friends. Sometimes you can, guess what? Turn on the fans. We got Swerve back in 2013 when the man who told everybody that night he was retiring. This is it. I'm calling it quits. ESPN broke the news. Mark Henry calls it quits and retires tonight. During his retirement speech, everybody tuned in because Mark Henry was one of those guys who had a decent run in WWE. ECW World Champ. He was a European champ. He was part of the Nation of Domination. He was Sexual Chocolate. He was the Hall of Fame, Mark Henry. Everything you wanted, he did it. Had a good run. Beat Randy Orton at Night of Champions clean to start the Hall of Fame. A good run as a champ. ECW World Heavyweight Champ. A tag champ. Team with Owen Hart. He did a lot. And people said, hey, Mark's a good guy. Why not tune in tonight to support Mark going out? This is the great, send-off. Mark comes out, cuts the promo that he's retiring, thanks the fans for the cheers, thank them for the boos. You guys have been with me. When I first broke in, they heard I was a fan of wrestling because I was a bodybuilder. I was a weightlifter, a power weightlifter in the Olympics, and I made the comment on national TV, hey, Mark, since you just shattered the world record of lifting weights, what are you going to do when you get back home? I'm going to go play WCW versus NWO video games. And that's when they said, hey, we can bring this guy in. And Mark was one of those guys why they liked him so much and we as fans embraced him, because he knew nothing about the business, but he learned the business. And he took the business serious. And he put his time in. And he started as a low carder and worked his way up to the main event of Night of Champions, beating Randy Orton. That's why that night in 2013, we tuned in. But boy, did Mark Henry swerve us all. Because John Cena comes out, our hero, our guy. If there's no other better person to send somebody out of retirement, you bring the most over guy out to pretty much give him the, hey man, the seal of approval, happy retirement. Appreciate you laying the groundwork for me to be able to walk on and go. And what does Mark do? World's strongest slam, rips the shirt off, and says, my heart don't pump Kool-Aid. I want one more run. I want a title shot. And everybody that night left the arena shot because Mark swerved the whole world. We all thought Mark was going. Now Mark Henry goes on to say, when he finally did decide to call it quits, people didn't take him seriously because of that night. But that was a good heel turn because it had been a very, very long time that we had seen a heel turn where we as the fans got swerved. They turned on us. WWE said, we're turning on you fans, and we're going to pull the okie doke on you with Mark Henry. Now, our next one before we jump into a commercial break, let's go to 1994. Man, I remember this one. 94 was a hot year in wrestling. Very hot year. WrestleMania 10, Royal Rumble, Survivor Series. Bret Hart was on top of the world. Bret Hart had a little controversy. What we like to call a little family affair. As my good brother Sly Stone would say. A family problem. 94, Saturday morning, sitting in front of the TV, eating me some Cinnamon Toast Crunch, watching me some Saturday Morning Mania, right here, that 10 a.m. spot that you're tuned in. I watched Survivor Series, and that night in 93, Survivor Series, leading up to this heel turn, you had the Harts, Bret, Bruce, Owen, and who was the other one? Bret, Bruce, Owen, it'll come to me in a minute. You had them versus Jerry the King Lawler and his Knights, who were Jeff Gaylord, Greg the Hammer Valentines, and Barry Horse. And in that match, it supposed to be Jerry the King Lawler, but Jerry the King Lawler got into some legal trouble with some allegations going on. So WWE pulled him from the match and released him very quietly and inserted Shawn Michaels, who had always been a thorn in the Hart side. And I mean, back then, WWE, when they booked, a top babyface always had two heels. There was always a thorn in the side. Of course, Jerry the King Lawler was the main one for Bret Hart. And then you had Shawn Michaels, who was that other little thorn that it hadn't got big, but if something just happened, they could plug him in. And that's what happened. In this match, Bret hurts his leg. Bret's trying to go on. Instead of tagging Owen, he keeps going. Owen's begging for the tag. And Owen had kind of been bounced around. He was the Hart back then that was just there. Great wrestler. Could do all the aerial moves that Bret couldn't do. Even was as technically sharp as Bret on the mat. But he just never found his niche during this era. Teamed up with Coco Beware, high energy. Went solo, did some solo stuff. He just couldn't find his steps. So putting him with Bret Hart to team up with the Hart brothers versus Shawn Michaels and the Knights, you really thought going to this match, this is Owen's night to come out. Bret hurts his leg. He wants to carry on the match. Bruce was the other Hart, Bart and Bruce. He wouldn't be able to carry on the match. And so what happens? Owens asks for the tag. Bret wouldn't get the tag. Finally, when Owen gets the tag, Bret pulls himself back up on the canvas and Owen knocks him down. Owen goes to check on Bret. What happens? Shawn Michaels rolls him up. 1, 2, 3. And that night, he was the only Hart eliminated in the Survivor Series match. Bruce, Bret, it was Keith, not Bart. Keith all survived. Owen comes back out and he's a little pissed off because you got to remember, Bruce and Keith knew how to wrestle, but they won't sign the WWE contracts. Only Bret and Owen was. Bruce and Keith was still wrestling up there in Calgary Stampede, and they won't even wrestle that much in Calgary Stampede. So Owen was pissed. And it leads to the biggest heel turn Because then you got that night. Owen snatches Bret down from the turnbuckles when Bret's celebrating, kicks Bret in the knee, and it starts arguably the biggest brother versus brother rivalry, with Owen cleanly securing a win over Bret at WrestleMania 10 in the first match. Opening match to me was probably arguably one of the biggest matches in that top 10 of good matches at WrestleMania. This is, if you're in a technical wrestling, go watch this. It was a great technical wrestling match of two guys that could go in it. And Owen steps out of the shadow of Bret and becomes the two-time Slammy Award winner, which I thought was cool because Bret won the Slammy Award, and Owen took it because Owen said, "You're winning this because it was my match you was in." Both of these, it was my match, so I'm taking him. He becomes the King of Heart, the Black Heart, and also he's no longer the Rock of the High Energy Award. The Black Heart, the King of Hearts, the two-time Slammy Award winner. And to me, Owen has a great heel run till he dies in that tragic day that we will always remember in wrestling history that we dare not talk about. But Owen had a great heel run all the way after this. And to me, Owen really stepped out of the shadows of Bret and his brothers and skyrocketed himself into another stratosphere of being considered as just equivalent to say that one of the greatest hearts to ever step in the square circle. We're going to jump into a commercial break right here, and we'll be back to talk about a few more big heel turns that has happened over the years. Right here, you're watching WOD on the Boom Broadcasting.
Being a cowboy, well, I don't know anything different. I had a very successful career. Life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally. And then I got hurt. I dug into mental health. I wanted to be better as a person. I start my day with a workout. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
We hope you guys enjoyed the first batch of heel turns right here on WOD. Some of the greatest heel turns that I have seen in the professional wrestling sports and all of the eras I have watched, from the New Japan to the WWE, WCW, ECW, and everything in between, TNA, Ring of Honor. Yes. But now, sometimes you don't have to be a wrestler to do a heel turn. Sometimes you just can be a damn heel, and it's all right in my books. This one is not a wrestler. This one has nothing to do with professional wrestling itself, but arguably the greatest heel turn in a sport besides wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no other than the king himself, LeBron James. The big night when he said those famous words that I myself have used before when I left for a job in my resignation. Sitting in the living room with Stephen A. And Stephen A. Smith finally answered the question after LeBron has danced around it. LeBron, what is it going to be? Are you going to be a Cleveland Cavalier next year, or are you going to go to free agency? And at that point, to me, LeBron James did the arguably biggest heel turn in the NBA history ever. Nobody will never do it, because the background story we're going to tell you about this after I say this sentence is going to blow your mind. I'm taking my talents to South Beach. Steve, that's the key. Say that again. I think in my best interest, I'm taking my talents to South Beach. LeBron James had a chance to see him in high school his senior year. He came to the Coliseum in Greensboro. I was not going to pay $10 to watch this kid play. And one of my buddies called me and said, this guy is going to change the NBA when he gets in the league. You do not want to say you had a chance to see him play an exhibition game for $10 when I was in college, $10 in 2002, and not watch him play. I said, why the hell not? Let's go see him. Pay the $10. There was even rumors that he had committed. What definitely made me want to go was he was pretty much committed to going to play for Duke University. I'm a Dookie. I love Duke. So I definitely want to go see. I said, hey, here's a chance to see a guy that's a number one draft pick who's going to stop being Duke for 1 year and hit the road. Well, back then, you didn't have to do the one and done. You go straight to the NBA. And I remember that night sitting in the Coliseum, looking at my good friend and saying, this guy will change NBA history forever. And that he has. He's already hit just 50,000 points in the NBA. If you want to hear more about the NBA, make sure you check out my boy, Jason 3 from Deep, on his show to hear more about the NBA. But LeBron had the biggest heel turn because he was a guy born in Akron, Ohio, a few minutes away from Cleveland, Ohio. He was drafted at the number 1 pick by the hometown, Cleveland. Cleveland was begging, itching, thirsty, needing. I mean, they were doing everything. They were willing to give all the money out of their savings account for an NBA championship. And here comes the hometown hero, LeBron James, to deliver the hometown state an NBA championship. And after unsuccessful bids, it always said, if I was LeBron and I looked to my left and I had Eric Snow that I had to pass the ball to, I would take the shot myself. He said, you know what? I got to go. I got to get out of here. I'm taking my talents to South Beach. Of course, we know after that night, all of LeBron Cleveland jerseys got burnt. They tore up Cleveland. It was a dumpster fire. It was ugly. And I mean, people were upset because the hometown hero that we had put all our wishes, hopes, and dreams in was leaving us to go to South Beach to form a big three with D Wade and Chris Bosh, and the rest was history. Now, as a heel always do, there's a redemption story. LeBron did come back to Cleveland and did give Cleveland that NBA championship. But to me, that was one of the biggest heel turns in the NBA ever when LeBron left the hometown team to go to play and take his talents to South Beach to be a Miami Heat. Heel turns don't have to happen just in wrestling. They can happen anywhere. Hey, even myself, when I resigned 2 of my jobs, I put that in there. I'm taking my talents, and I put the new place I was going. P.S. I'm taking my talents and put a new town or a new city I was going to work for in the bottom of the city, especially one of my supervisors probably watching this, but probably say, you smart ass. Now back to wrestling with heel turns. Let's go to WCW. We did a lot of WWF, a lot of WWE, but we have not done one in WCW. And this argument was a big one in WCW because we talked about the Rockers breaking up. We talked about Andre and Hogan. We talked about who's the other we talked about? It couldn't come in a minute. We talked about Owen Hart, Bret Hart, Mark Henry, all that. I told you come to my mind in a bad thing. But here's one that we have not talked about in WCW. That was a quiet one. But it was one that I'm glad that happened. Because every time I hear a siren, my office is right beside the fire station. Our fire station shares our town hall building. Every time a fire station truck rolls out with those sirens on and they're spinning around, the first thing I yell is, holler if you hear me. I remember my first day at work, I heard those sirens, and I yelled down the hallway, holler if you hear me. And everybody looked at me like, what is going on? Who this guy did? We just hired a wacko? This guy's crazy. And finally, after us going through a few employees, we hired another wrestling fan. And a few days after he had been hired, sirens go off. Red sirens got a fire truck. I yell down the hall, holler if you hear me. He said, I hear you, brother. It's all about that Steiner mouth. This heel turn is no older than back in 1998. Scott Steiner and Rick Steiner, arguably 2 of the greatest tag team specialists to be out there. Braun Breaker, look at what he's doing. And Scott Steiner said, Brett, if you like Braun Breaker, go watch his Uncle Scott, because Braun's stealing all his uncle's moves. What Scott say? Quit stealing all the moves, nephew. Probably one of the biggest ones. But this was the breakout Rick Steiner as a doll-faced gremlin and Scott Steiner's Big Papa Pump, and both of them went into the Hall of Fame as the Steiner brothers. Steiner brothers cut their teeth at ECW in New Japan. They went in WWF. After leaving WWF, they went to WCW, and arguably at that time, besides signing the Hulkster and Randy Savage and the Warrior, this was a big pickup for WCW that had a stacked tag division. You had American Males, Harlem Heat, the Nasty Boys. You had a lot of people, Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, and the Four Horsemen. A lot of good tags. And bringing in Steiners, who were probably one of the best tags. You had Public Enemy. All of that, it just gave them more star power. But back in 98, it was time. It was time Super Brawl 8, Steiners versus the Outsiders for the tag titles. Everybody knew Hall and Nash was going to lose this match. The fix was in. Nash could not do the power bomb. If he did the power bomb, a $50,000 fine. Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, and Bobby the Brain Heenan on the call. Arguably three of the greatest commentators. Tony, play-by-play. Bobby, color guy. Mike Tenay, statistician. What more could you ask? Super Brawl 8, Outsiders, Hall and Nash versus the Steiners. Everybody knew the Steiners were going to win the match. They got the heels on the run. Hall runs out the ring. Nash runs out the ring. Scott Steiner poses in the middle of the WCW sign. Rick Steiner takes the victory lap and gets down and starts barking like a dog. And what do we see? Scott Steiner turns on his own brother, just like Owen Hart did with Bret Hart, right there at WCW, and joins the NWO. And thus Big Papa Pump becomes a true living factor for the NWO. Now, both of them had great singles runs, but we would never thought that the Steiner brothers would turn. One of them would turn on their own brother. That night, arguably, was probably one of the biggest heel turns in WCW, besides another one we'll be talking about right here on today's show. Now, let's go back. We talked about a lot of heel turns in the modern era that I watched. But now let's go back to that era that I had to go back and watch at Granny's house on VHS. And let's go to Mid-South Wrestling. Granny had a lot of Mid-South days, I'll tell you. We would go to the flea markets. A lot of y'all probably don't even know what a flea market is. I'll tell them my age again. Me and Granny would go to the flea markets and we would scout, would just shop around. Couldn't get the right word I was thinking of. We would just shop around looking for old wrestling VHS tapes, or where people would get these tapes from other people, double record them, and go sell them at the flea market. Because, we only could pull that North Carolina NWA. But if you want to know what was going on in the AWA or Mid-South, you had to buy VHS tape. Now, you may be 3 months behind because it already happened, but to you, it was brand new because we had no regionalized magazine to talk about wrestling except PWI. Back then, it was hard to get PWI. Ted DiBiase did one of the most villainous things, not the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, when he turned on his best friend, JYD, the Junkyard Dog. And I could not do a show without referencing somebody from the great wrestling state of itself, North Carolina, no other than Waynesboro, North Carolina's own, Fayetteville State University alumni's own, the Junkyard Dog. Dog was the man. Back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, Cowboy Bill Watt, booking and running Mid-South, did something that nobody had ever done before. Made an African-American, a black man, his main attraction, top star main event. Had never been done. He took a gamble, and boy, did the gamble pay off. He gave Junkyard Dog the keys to the kingdom, and boy, Dog just did his thing and ran in Mid-South. Everybody loved the Dog. You couldn't say nothing about the Dog to Granny, because if you talked about the Dog to Granny, you caught a right hook for her, because she loved the Dog. The Dog only knew how to do one move. It was thump. It was power slam, thump, 1, 2, 3. Go watch Junkyard Dog match, you'll see. But the Dog had a persona that Cowboy Bill Watts was able to get everybody to build into. He would come out with the dog chain on. Another one bites the dust. All the stuff. Bad Leroy Brown, baddest man in the whole damn town. He would come out on songs like that, pushing a wheelbarrow with junk in it. And people just related and grew to the Dog. But the Dog had two big feuds in Mid-South. One was with DiBiase, his best friend, and another was with the Freebirds. And we'll talk about the Birds in a minute with Dog. But DiBiase was his best friend, and they put DiBiase with Dog because whenever Dog was getting jumped, here comes the young Ted DiBiase to help Dog make the save, and DiBiase became a big babyface. A lot of people did not know that Ted DiBiase was a babyface. Go watch some Mid-South and you will see it. Dog finally gives Ted DiBiase a title shot because he's his best friend. And Ted DiBiase has said that night he got almost shot at. His tires were slashed. His wheels bust out. Damn, do you remember when wrestling was like that? That was the good old days. When you hated heels, you busted out those windows. We're going to talk about the Birds because Birds got a lot of stories in Mid-South. But that heat was so much because DiBiase used a loaded glove, punched Dog in the face, knocked him out, beat him for the 1-2-3 to win the North American Heavyweight Championship in Mid-South. That was big because Dog, every time he got ready, they told such a good story with this heel turn because every time Dog got ready to take it up another level, he just could not do it because Ted DiBiase was his best friend. And it was like, I don't want to hurt my friend. Yes, I gave him this title match, but I'm going to take it easy on him because I expect him to take it easy on me and made the better man win. But Dog never expected that DiBiase would use a loaded glove to knock him out for the 1-2-3. That night, Ted DiBiase got threatened. They busted out his windows. They slashed the tires on his car. He had to get escorted out by the sheriff department because fans were irate and was ready to kill DiBiase because it was a heel turn that they had never experienced in Mid-South. That was a big one. Now another one, and I got two with the Birds. This is Mid-South. The Birds, always heels. The Birds tell the story. If you go back and you look at Michael P.S. Hayes, I'm talking a little bit about Michael P.S. Hayes in the next segment. He tells this story of the night when they spray a aerosol in Dog's eyes, and they blinded Dog. Dog's off TV for a few weeks. Dog comes back to TV, and Dog says, my daughter was born, and I was unable to see her birth thanks to those fabulous Freebirds, the Freebirds. They blinded me, and I couldn't see my daughter be born. And Jim Cornette has verified this. Ted DiBiase has verified it. Michael P.S. Hayes has verified it because Junkyard Dog told him. They brought Dog to sit on the corner that night after he had cut this promo a few weeks after that. They sit out there because the people waiting to see JYD. JYD's sitting on the side of the ring in a chair. A fan walks up beside JYD and whispers to JYD, Dog, give me the word and I'll shoot those bastards. They took you from seeing your daughter. We're going to make sure they never see another day on this earth. Dog had to make a decision to break kayfabe or save the Bird's life. Dog did not break kayfabe, but he was able to talk this fan down from obviously getting ready to commit murder in the Mid-South Arena. So that's when heat was real back then. Heat was real back then. People took this stuff seriously when their fans, your guy got hurt on the heel when DiBiase turned on Dog. They hated DiBiase. They wanted to kill DiBiase. That's how it was back in the late 70s, 80s. You hated heels. And that's what we saw in Mid-South. And Cowboy Bill Watts was able to run good storylines with JYD, with heel turns and all this stuff. Now, talking about the Freebirds, nobody knows how to draw heat like the Birds. Bad Streets, Atlanta, GA. Bad Streets, the whole USA. Nobody knows how to draw heat like the Birds. And one thing about the Birds I like is that the Birds can do two things. It's two things you don't do in Texas. Number one is talk about the Prez, Dallas Cowboys. You don't do that in Texas without getting ran out of that state. And number two, you don't turn on the Von Erichs in Texas. Turn on the Von Erichs in Texas. You just signed your own death warrant certificate because they're coming for you. But who better to do it than the fabulous Freebirds? No other than Michael Pure Sexy Hayes, Bam Bam Terry Gordy, and Buddy Rogers. The fabulous Freebirds turned on the Von Erichs in Texas in the Sportatorium Arena in the 70s and 80s. And they tore the house down. They had some great matches. Go back and watch Birds versus the Von Erichs. And Michael P.S. Hayes talks about the night they turned on the Von Erichs. Now, when they got to their car, the windows were busted out, the tires were flat, they had took baseball bats and tinted the car up, they had knocked the mirrors off on the side of the car, everything you could think of. You got to remember back then, they had shirt protection at these shows, but the shirts were so invested into the matches that, hey, if a fan goes out there and destroy the car, I'm with you. They turn on the Von Erichs. I help you do it. I got my eyes turned. I got my eyes turned. I didn't see you do it. And that night, when they turned on the Von Erichs in Texas, it started a whole good war that lasted a good 4 or 5 years of them going back and forth with the Von Erichs in Texas, where people could come and pay money to watch the Von Erichs, the hometown heroes, beat them up. And you got to remember, the Birds had so much heat back then that when the Birds beat the Legion of Doom, and the Birds that already been threatened to be shot by somebody for JYD, when they beat the Legion of Doom, Michael P.S. Hayes said they had to bring shirts and gather around all three of the Birds to get them out of the arena. And he tells the story about how Bam Bam Terry Gordy, Bam Bam Terry Gordy had that power bomb. After that power bomb, Michael P.S. Hayes pinned you 1, 2, 3, or either Buddy Rogers 1, 2, 3. He tells the story about how Bam Bam had somebody spray liquid plumber in his eyes, and he had to be rushed to the back, tripped over the rope, getting to the back of the ring, because back then they only had rope to keep the fans from getting to you. All of this stuff to get to the back of the arena, where he had to get medical attention and could have lost his sight. That's how bad it was for the Birds anywhere they went. I tell you, the Birds was this era's Logan Paul, Dominic Mysterio. They knew how to draw heat. My dear old granny, it was one thing she hated. It was the Fabulous Freebirds. And she told me, even when I started driving, Michael P.S. Hayes was in WWF as Doc Hendry. She still knew who he was. She said, let's go to the capital city, or let's go to Charlotte, because I owe Michael P.S. Hayes a slap for what he did to the Rock and Roll Express. I owe him one. And my dear old granny, before she died, said, if you ever see Michael P.S. Hayes, you slap him one good time for me, because I hate the Birds. She hated the Birds so bad that even after her funeral, when we gathered at the grave site, my uncle played Backstreet USA, and everybody in Little Hill was getting ready to beat him up for doing that. That's how bad she hated the Baptist Freebirds. That's called good heat right there. When somebody hates you with that much of passion because of what your character is, your antics in the ring, your storytelling, who you are, that's called good heat. The Birds talk about having to have the sheriff department, as they turn on the Von Erichs, having to drive their car to the local sheriff department, park it in the pen, lock it up in a fence, have the sheriff department bring them to the arena, escort them in, even stand in front of their locker room and bring them out to the ring because people wanted to get their hands on the Birds that bad. That's good heat. The Von Erichs and the Birds had a great match back in '84. Michael Page and the Birds come out on Bad Streets, Atlanta, GA, Back Streets, Bad Streets, the whole USA. The Von Erichs come out on Ted Nuggets, Strangleholds, and the Von Erichs got a big win in the Wheels Rogers Coliseum that sent them over and put the Birds back. But I'm going to tell you, back in the 70s and 80s, if you wanted to get a guy over, man, you put him, you intertwine him somewhere with the Fabulous Freebirds, he would be over like Rover. Now we have talked about Mid-South, the NWA, WWF, WCW, WWE, but we have not talked about another promotion, NXT. Arguably the biggest heel turn ever in NXT. And you know this one, everybody knows this one. NXT TakeOver Chicago. Tommaso Ciampa turns on Johnny Gargano, Johnny Wrestling, at the end of the show in Chicago after DIY had just lost the tag titles to AOP, the Authors of Pain. Chicago was special for Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Wrestling. That's where they cut the teeth at in the Indies in the Midwest. They cut the teeth there. They worked the Indies hard in that area. That was their backyard. And for Ciampa to do it in Chicago was the icing on the cake for this heel turn. Arguably one of the greatest heel turns in NXT. A lot of people still talk about it. And it set up one of the greatest rivalries in NXT with Ciampa and Gargano in a good run. Another good NXT heels turn that started in Ring of Honor. Kevin Steen, El Granero. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, that's heel turn. It gets better every time they do it. When KO turns on Sami, you can't ask for nothing better than that. That was another good heel turn in NXT that started a great rivalry that to this day is still going on. Well, we're getting down to the last two, ladies and gentlemen. And I mean, we got some good ones for our last two, maybe last three. Stone Cold, we're not going to talk about that one. Everybody knows when Stone Cold goes corporate. The Rock, we're not going to talk about that one. Everybody knows when Rock goes corporate. So we got maybe three more we need to look at, maybe four. Between those time. We're getting pressed for time right now. One of my favorite heel turns, 2019, Monday Night Raw. comes to the dark side and joins Sasha Banks, now known as Mercedes Moné. Joined Sasha Banks, and to me, that was it. I was waiting for Bayley to come join. I want to call Mercedes Moné so bad. Sasha Banks, I was waiting for her to come join it. She turned on Becky Lynch that night and sided on the dark side with Sasha. And to me, that's when the greatest shirt was ever made. 2 belts. 2 belts champs. Sasha with the tag belt and the SmackDown women's belt. Bayley with the tag belt and the Monday Night Raw women's belt. I was so glad. Those belts, I was so glad that this had happened. I was glad Bayley turned heel. I was a big Sasha guy back then. And to bring Bayley over as a heel, and that really hurt because that hurt a lot of kids because people love Bayley. She was what's I want to call her? If you think of the Archie comics, she was the Betty Cooper, the girl next door, where Sasha was more the Veronica, the princess. To have the girl next door side with the princess heel was the icing on the cake. Good turn right here. To do it on Becky made it even better, and it really got Bayley on a good plateau. But a lot of people say Bayley's role model heel was good. Go back to 2019 and watch where Bayley and Sasha was running through WWE. Now, our next one. Plateau this person to a whole nother level. Self-freaking Rollins turns on the Shield. The chair shot heard around the world when Self-sided with the corporation with Triple H and Randy Orton. And since this heel turn, Self and Roman and John Moxley have gone. Moxley tearing up in AEW. Roman, arguably one now the greatest wrestler of all time in that category. Self, arguably the greatest in-ring performer of all time in that category. That night when Self broke away from the Shield and turned his back on his Shield brothers will always live as a great heel turn. So we had to speed up because we had to get to our last 2 right here. We're going to do 96, and then we're going to say the best one to be for last. 96. Who's the third band? Hall and Nash coming into WCW. Hall and Nash suckering everybody in WCW. Tell them, I'm getting paid by Vince in WWF, and I'm getting paid in WCW. And people were believing it. Hall and Nash were just suckering everybody in the backstage. They came in as the outsiders. We as fans were swerved because we thought maybe they were working both promotions. Maybe there was an intertwined agreement like we're seeing with WWE and TNA, a partnership. They come in. Nobody knows who the third guy is. You got Savage, Luger, and Sting defending WCW's honor, trying to beat these guys so we can get rid of them. Savage goes down. Sting's hurt. Luger's hurt. Hall and Nash keep telling the referee the third guy will be here by the end of the night. Who's the third guy? We all assumed it was going to be somebody from WWF. That's what we thought. Hall's from WWF. Nash from WWF. Could it be the Taker? Could it be anybody? We didn't know. Who's the third guy? Biggest heel turn ever. 1996. When Hogan drops the leg drop. And Bobby the Brain Heenan, when he came out and Dusty Rhodes said, go get him, Hulkster. Go get him, baby. And Bobby the Brain Heenan said, is he the third band? And Tony Schiavone said, will you please? He's not the third guy. It's the Hulkster coming to save the day. Hulk Hogan became Hollywood Hogan that night. That heel turn made local news in North Carolina. I remember 6 a.m. watching 6 a.m. news, getting ready to go to school, and seeing that made local news and national news that Hogan had become a bad guy. People could not believe it. Hogan was like a Bob Backlund when he became a heel. And that wasn't a big heel turn for Bob Backlund. I think they would have done it in his earlier days. It would have been more when he was All-American. When he came back and went through the snap, that was a big heel turn. But people could not believe that Hulk Hogan had finally come to the dark side. Now, our last one. And this is one that arguably the greatest of all time. The greatest of all time. Right here on the Boom Broadcasting. We all know which one it is. Sometimes you don't got to turn heel on your friend or your family or your best friend or on your group or your team. Sometimes you don't have to be like the Four Horsemen that turn heel on Sting. Sometimes you don't have to stab your brother in the back like Seth Rollins did with the Shield. Sometimes you don't have to hurt your best friend, Bayley, to align with your original best friend, Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks. These 2 heel turns just imploded right before our eyes. The first one is the Hulkster and Randy Savage. Randy Savage was the champs. They were the mega powers. But sometimes a woman gets in the way. Hulkster wanted to be the good guy. They were fighting the Titan Typhoons, Hakeem the Dream, and Big Boss Man with Slick as their manager. Mega Powers fighting them. Elizabeth gets and tries to help Savage. She falls. Hope takes her back. Savage has an opportunity to, guess what? Take his wife to the back. Hulkster takes her back to the locker room, comes back. Savage is upset. They win the match. They get in the backstage and they implode, and Savage becomes heel. He beats Hope up because he says, Hope, you've been looking at my wife. You've been giving her the eye. I know you have. Well, guess what? He does. They break up. Mega Powers break up, and it's over. Mega Powers broke up, and that was a big, big heel turn. But now, the biggest one of all, we had the Mega Powers in there. Biggest one of all is, like I said, sometimes you don't have to turn on your best friend. You don't have to turn on your family member. You don't have to turn on your brother or your sister. Sometimes the boss can turn on you. Ladies and gentlemen, arguably the greatest heel turn of all time is no other than the Montreal Screwjob, the night that Bret screwed Bret, according to Vince McMahon. We know the story. We know all the back end story. Bret didn't want to give up the title. Vince could not have happened again on WCW TV. What Alundra Blaze Medusa had just did when she dropped the women's title in the trash can. He had to get the belt off of Bret the Hitman Hart. And what does he do? He screws Bret that night. And the story of Mr. Corporate McMahon begins as the evil heel boss who will do whatever he has to do to protect his promotion. I know 96 when Hogan turned heel was big, but that night was big because nobody saw it coming because Vince lied. Vince told Bret, I'll let you forfeit the title, surrender the title. It's going to be a DQ. And he says, ring the bell on the match, and it's over. That was the biggest heel turn because nobody saw it coming. And till this day, Brent still says, Bret, screw Bret. I want to thank you for tuning in to WOD this week. Long show. Appreciate you staying with me the whole time. This is Shawn. I'm out, and I'll see you next week on WOD.